Welcome back to the channel. All right, today we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it sweet. We're going over Bitcoin technical analysis and e-gold technical analysis. I'm going to give you whatever I think is going to be happening in the market so you're prepared. Let's go ahead and get this done. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, check the description for my referrals for stuff and for my Twitter link. That's the most important thing. Follow me there for updates throughout the week because sometimes work gets busy and I can't make videos all the time. All right, here we go. We are going to start off today by looking at two tiny pieces of news. All right, so let's do that. We are going to get everything on screen here. All right, so the first thing, MicroStrategy has purchased yet another very large amount of Bitcoin. So it shows us here that MicroStrategy has purchased an additional 3,907 Bitcoin for 45 $177 million in cash at an average price of 49,294. So that's roughly 45,294. So that's roughly 45,300. So I want you to keep that number in your mind, 45,300. As of 8/23, so that's as of yesterday, they hodl 108,992 Bitcoin, acquired for a total of 2.918 billion at an average price of roughly 26,769 per Bitcoin. Just to give you rough terms, MicroStrategy is probably up around $2 billion right now on their Bitcoin investment. That's pretty damn good. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next piece of news. The next thing is something posted very recently by Mr. Will Clement on YouTube, or on Twitter. So if you take a look at this, basically what this is showing us that there was a large amount of Bitcoin that was moved onto exchanges in the last week, since roughly August the 16th to August the 23rd, we saw about 29,696 Bitcoin moved onto exchanges. All right, let's go back for a second. 3,907 of those Bitcoin have already been purchased by MicroStrategy. So that's one thing to remember. All right, so he also says here, this is not a trend we want to see continue. And he's right. Basically, you do not want to see that as the price rises, the amount of Bitcoin going onto exchanges rises as well. Because what you really want to see for further price movement in, a longer term bull market is you want to see the price rise and the amount of Bitcoin that is on exchanges continues to drop. I have a feeling that the price is going to continue to rise and we are going to see the amount of Bitcoin continue to rise for a short time. I think that it's going to be a hurdle to get past the 55 to 60,000 level. I think you're going to see a good amount of sell off there and the price is going to come back down because you're going to have people taking profits because a lot of people still have an average buy price of like 50, 55,000 and they're scared. And a lot of those people are going to be selling some of their Bitcoin. So if they have cold wallets, you might see some of those people taking a portion to sell off and take some profits. Nothing to be worried about, but it's something to be aware of. I also think that as long as we continue to see this curve flatten out, it's not quite done that yet, but as this curve starts flattening out, if the price keeps moving up in that upward trajectory, that's going to be a really good sign. Okay, so these are the two things that I wanted you to know before we move directly into the Bitcoin chart. So let's go ahead and pull up the Bitcoin chart. Let's go into our primary view. Now, basically what we're seeing in the Bitcoin, we're looking at the daily chart, all right? I want you to look at a couple of things on this daily chart. Well, the first thing is that we are in a long-term regression pattern, all right? So I'm going to go over to the weekly so you can get a better view of those regression lines one more time, okay? So the regression lines, let's go ahead and turn the fib off so you can see it a little bit better. All right, so the fib is off. So the regression lines are these channels that are drawn, the white lines going across the screen. Now, as you can see here, these regression lines show us a pretty good long-term view. We'll go into the monthly so it's even easier to see. You can see a pretty long-term view of what's happening with Bitcoin. It's kind of moving through these regression channels. It started off here, moved over to the right, kept going up all the way to the top. It went past the top regression channel. Then it consolidated back down, not to the bottom channel, but to the channel here. And now we are basically in this channel where previously we hadn't fallen into it, but we had gotten support at the top of that channel. Well, what have we done now? We have turned this previous support into resistance. And that is what we are dealing with at the moment. So let's go ahead and go back to our daily chart now that you have the longer term view. And in the daily chart, you can really see it clearly. You can see that there have been a couple of points here. I'm going to turn off the TD sequential. There are a couple of points here where we got very close to the regression line, and here where we actually hit the regression line and bounced right off of it. And that regression line was at almost exactly 50,500. Now I want to show you the importance of these regression lines. Okay, if we go back down and turn on our fib, well, look at what happened here. Okay, if we zoom into this, you can see that not only did we hit this regression line, but this was also right at our Fibonacci extension line. So this confluence of the Fibonacci extension and the resistance line is where we hit resistance, right? The upper channel of our regression channel, along with the Fibonacci extension, is where we hit resistance, and we can expect a lot of resistance there. So that's definitely something that we're going to keep an eye out on. Now, the interesting thing is that this regression line is on a steep uptrend, meaning that the regression line is going up very quickly. Now, that also means that the next time we hit this regression line, well, we're looking at the price moving up. If we hit the regression line in the next 2 or 3 days, it's already at 51,000. So we've hit resistance on it roughly 2 times. We actually hit it directly once, and we bounced right past it. We hit clear resistance on that regression line. Now what I'm expecting to see is sideways consolidation for a little bit of time. But that little bit of time could be just a day, right? We don't really know what's going to happen with the Fed this week. The Fed is going to be making some announcements this week regarding tapering. If you're unfamiliar with tapering and what that means for monetary policy, I recommend you watch my previous video where I went over monetary policy, commodities, inflation, all the stuff you need to know about global markets that really impacts investors. So keep an eye on that. Take a look at that video. It'll help you out. But basically this week, we are going to see a little bit of volatility until the Fed makes their announcement, and you may even see some sell-off when that happens. Now, assuming there is some sell-off, what are our downside targets? Well, for Bitcoin, the downside target right now, the clear one, is right here. Okay, this is on our 20 exponential moving average on the daily, and this has now moved up to around 45,800. So seeing Bitcoin drop back down to 45.8 entirely feasible, because you also see this dashed line in the middle. That is actually our median line for the entire long-term Fibonacci retracement. This Fibonacci retracement in the background goes all the way back to the March crash in 2020. So this is a very long-term fib, and it's giving us some clear support and resistance lines. Now we have an even bigger indication that this is going to be a support line, because that's where our 20 exponential moving average is. It is right below that line. You'll see that we hit support here before, so if we drop now, we can expect support here, and that's roughly the 45 to 46,000 area. To be more specific, it is right around 45,800. So that's what I'm looking for at a downside target. Now, if we fall below that, well, the bottom I'm looking at is roughly right here at around 41,700, and the reason for that is at the bottom of this 382 fib extension line, so this green line that you see going across your screen. And it's very common in uptrends for us to turn previous resistance into support. And you'll see here that this fib extension line was definitely previous resistance, right? We hit it twice. And if we go back, I'm sure we hit it plenty of other times too, right? If we go back further, we hit it once again here. So this was all the way back in January. So in January, we got resistance at the same Fibonacci extension line. Then we blasted through, hit all-time highs. When we came back down, we hit resistance on it once again, and then we hit resistance on it once again. There's no reason that we don't consolidate and come back and flip that into support. That also correlates with two very key moving averages. Right now, you have the 50 exponential moving average slightly above the line at around 42,150, and you have the 100 exponential moving average right below the line at 41,340. So pretty much those are your bottom targets. I'm not looking for Bitcoin to go anywhere below 41.3, and if it does, the last level of support is going to be right at 40K. It's a nice even number. We also have our 200 exponential moving average there, and we have a ton of volume support there, but I don't expect it'll go down that far. I expect that it may not even go below the 45,800 mark. If it goes below that, then obviously we have the potential of hitting 42, but I think what's more likely to happen is if we drop below 45,800, what you're likely going to see is a wick and it get bought right back up and get back into this upper channel above the median Fibonacci extension line. I'm also expecting that once we start to see this RSI on the daily start coming down, it's sitting at around 61. A little bit more sideways trading with downside momentum can bring down that RSI nicely to around the 50 to 60 level. So that's where I'd like to see it. Right now it's around 64 or 63. I want to see it come down a little bit further to somewhere between 55 and 60, kind of here. You know, where this bottom was there. If it can come back down to this level, that would be great, because after that, we saw a rise go from 37K all the way up to 45,000, and we barely got overextended. So seeing the RSI come back down and having a little bit of consolidation, always good. We've seen that on this entire leg up. You saw it here, you saw a little bit of it here, you saw a bigger one right here. So seeing that again, definitely good. It's healthy to move up in that fashion, to have slow consolidations on the way. You want to see a staircase on the way up, and that's kind of what we're seeing. So that's pretty much it for Bitcoin. That's what I'm looking at for the short term for our targets for the downside. I guess 10 minutes is over, huh? It's not going to be a 10-minute long video. So if we're looking for upside targets for Bitcoin, well, it's quite simple, right? We need to break past 50K. We need to break past 50K, and we need to turn 50K into support. We've hit resistance on it once. It's very possible that we'll hit resistance on it a couple of more times until we have a breakout to somewhere around 54 to 55K. I expect resistance there, and then we come down and we flip 50K into support. So right now, 50K is resistance. We move past it, we come back down, flip it into support. Once that happens, then things can go crazy, because once 50K turns into support, well, then you are not that far away from all-time highs. And that's when people start FOMOing in. They think they've missed the boat. They say, oh, I should have bought at 28, 29, like I did, and like many of you did. But that's usually what happens with things like this. And it looks as of now that we're very much on track for the next leg of the bull run to kick off very quickly. Now, going back to Will Clement, basically what happened with Will Clement's thing, that 26,000 Bitcoin got moved onto exchanges, well, that happened over the last week. And over the last week, we saw some downside, but we have yet to see a major drop. That's telling me that even with that much Bitcoin flowing onto exchanges, the supply is being bought up. And that's kind of what happens with a supply shock. Now, assuming that that Bitcoin has been, you know, some of it's been sold, or maybe it's being used to leverage long, we really don't know. But there's always that potential that if that Bitcoin does hit the market, that you could see that drop back down to 45K or even 42K. So that's why I wanted to be really clear with you on those downside targets. So that's pretty much what we're looking at right now. The key is break past 50, flip it to support. Got to move one step at a time, and we're going to be looking at this, you know, again later in the week or early next week to give you an update once we have more data. So that's pretty much what we're seeing with Bitcoin as of right now. Overall market sentiment is very bullish. You're getting a lot of accumulation at these levels, and with Michael Saylor coming out and saying that he bought so much Bitcoin once again here at 45,300. I mean, what we're talking about at 45,300 is this line. All right, I'm going to put in a horizontal line right at 45,300. Okay, so that's about here. Okay, so that means that Michael Saylor and his team were buying Bitcoin when the price was in this area throughout last week. Okay, they were accumulating in this range, and they picked up Bitcoin at a really good price. So that's basically what we saw here. We saw some consolidation, there were some dips, and he took advantage of those and got a good average price of 45. So very good for Michael Saylor. I'm glad they're adding to their reserve, because that is Bitcoin that is likely not going to hit the market again. He understands it's a great investment, and he's likely going to hold on to it for a very, very long time. Very smart guy. I wish I was in the position to buy that much Bitcoin myself. Okay, so we now move forward. Okay, we're going to go right into eGold. All right, and with eGold, we saw something very interesting today on the daily chart. I told you about this on Twitter. Hopefully some of you guys saw it, but we had a dip come all the way down to around 132, and then we quickly wicked up to that 135, 136 support level. So we came down, people got scared, sold off a little bit, and then we immediately came back up and we hit that 135 support level that I told you about on Twitter, and we've started working our way back up. Now, this is not a confirmed uptrend yet, even though we hit on the hourly a 9 flash on the TD sequential, telling us we were highly overextended. You can see on the RSI, we dipped below the 30 level, and now we are recovering. And this is fairly slow recovery so far, and sometimes these recoveries can have more downside. So it's still entirely possible. We're at 140 now. We could come back and touch 135 again, maybe a little bit lower. So you may have a chance to buy a little bit at a discount. I bought some at 133.50, and I'm really happy with that. I'm glad I did. If we see any more dips, then I'm probably going to do my accumulation for next week, this week, just in case, because I think this could just spike up at any time. So I don't really want to wait too long. I mean, that's why I just pulled the trigger at 133. Okay, so if we look at the longer term for eGold, let's see what we're seeing here, okay? So this is the 4-hour chart. On the 4-hour chart, you can see some clear indications that we are getting support on this 100 exponential moving average. Now, the interesting thing with this is that we did wick below it, but we didn't really even come too close to the 125 level, and that's where we have our 200 exponential on the 4 hours. So this is actually really good that we hit support here, and it's pretty obvious, right? If you look to your right-hand side at the volume profile, there's a lot of support at 135. So it's expected that you're going to get support there. That's why I told you that on Twitter, so you're aware of it. And in case anyone was looking to buy, that information may have helped them pull the trigger like it helped me pull the trigger when I saw it. Okay, next thing we're going to look at is the daily chart. All right, the daily chart is what's most important. So if you look on the daily chart, one critical thing that happened here is that yesterday we hit something that we like to call the 9 flash. So you see a 9 flash on the daily here in green. You should always be keeping an eye on the TD sequential, because when you saw this 9 flash yesterday, you should have known that today was a good time to try to buy at a dip, because the 9 flash green normally means that you're overextended and you're going to see some type of correction coming. This correction was completely predicted by this 9 flash at 148. So it allowed me to prepare, get the funds ready so I could buy the dip, and that's exactly what I did. So keep an eye on these things. They can give you some great insight on what might be coming. It doesn't always happen that way, but it very well could. So we came down now, and on the daily chart, this is looking actually extremely bullish, because on the daily chart, what you really want to see is you want to see yourself riding the 20 exponential moving average. All right, so now we're going to go back a little, and we're actually going to turn off the TD sequential. I want to give you some historical information so you can see what I mean. All right, look at this massive uptrend we had the last time when we moved from around $9 in December and we started moving up. Notice how we were hugging the 20 exponential moving average. We hugged it all the way up to the all-time high of 229, or about 230, right? And when we hit that all-time high, we started to drop. We turned the 20 exponential into support. We traded along it, fell below it, until finally we capitulated with the Bitcoin crash. Now, when that happens, that tells you that obviously you're having death crosses on the moving averages, right? The 20 exponential moving average is crossing below all the others. That's a death cross. And as you start seeing those death crosses, you know you're getting in, it's time for a fairly large consolidation. So we have seen those death crosses. Well, on the Bitcoin chart and on the eGold chart, we have seen some very major golden crosses over the last week. Now, what has that done? Well, that's taken us back above the 20 exponential moving average, and we have started hugging that moving average again. Now, that's very interesting, because now if we go back to our weekly chart and we look at even a longer time frame, now when you look at the weekly, the moving averages don't make too much of a difference. But when you look at this chart here, you'll see this has happened before. It happened once here and we started moving up. It happened once here and we started moving up. It's happening again at the exact same regression channel. Now, the interesting thing is on each of these uptrends, you see the same thing with the moving averages, right? On the daily chart, you start to see golden crosses. So we saw those golden crosses previously. We're seeing those golden crosses again, and we are hugging the 20 exponential moving average. That's very, very bullish. Even with today's dip, we came down and touched the 20 exponential moving average. That's really good. You want that to happen. That means it's a healthy consolidation. If we dropped all the way down to 105, that really wouldn't be great. You know, that's not good. You don't want to get that close to the 200 exponential moving average on the daily chart, because if you fall below it, it could shift into death crosses. So right now we're maintaining the golden crosses. Our lowest level that we would want to hit is around 115. That is right between our 100 and our 50 exponential moving averages. It's also right at the base of our regression line. I want to see if we do drop to that area, how much do we hold support here? I personally think it's unlikely that we're even going to go back down that far. Bitcoin would have to capitulate probably down to like 40K for that to happen. So if Bitcoin doesn't drop down to 40K, it's unlikely that that's going to happen. But if Bitcoin does drop down to 40K, then it's possible you're going to see a lot of red on the alts, and you could see eGold drop down to the 115 level. So just to be prepared, that's where I'm going to put my buy orders for next week. Like, I already have those funds ready, so the buy orders are going to be placed today, and they're going to be sitting at around 115, 116, 117, somewhere in that range, so that if it does drop overnight when I'm sleeping or whatever, I'll still pick up my eGold. So that's my plan, and I want to see support on this regression channel if it happens. But the key, if that happens, is that it continues moving up before the 20 exponential moving average starts to curve downward. So basically, if we see that drop down to 115, we want to see a recovery within 3 to 4 days maximum, because in about 3 to 4 days, you're going to start to see the 20 exponential start curving down, and that's not good. We want to see the 20 exponential moving average kind of like a wave moving up. So a slight dip, fine, moving up again, and then we want to get back above it. Now, if we maintain it the way that we have, if we stay above the 135 support and we keep moving sideways anywhere between 135 and 150 for the next week or so, that'll be really good, because that'll give the 20 exponential moving average time to go up even higher, lowering or increasing our support levels, and basically showing us that, hey, you know, this is another great indication that we are coming back in that major bull cycle. You know, it's something we just have to wait and see, because what's going to happen with Bitcoin is also very important. A lot of the altcoin markets are still following Bitcoin, even though it seems like some of them pump a lot faster than Bitcoin, and you're like, oh, it's not correlated to Bitcoin anymore. It is still correlated to Bitcoin, because that's where a lot of the money is. Right? That's the reserve currency. You have a lot of money in stable coins, and you have a lot more money in Bitcoin. So you do see a lot of transfer of wealth between alts and Bitcoin, right? A lot of times if people think that an altcoin is going to drop and they don't want to miss out on Bitcoin gains in the meantime, they take their alts and they convert them to Bitcoin, hold that there, get some Bitcoin gains, and then after they think that the alts are at a good price, they convert it back. So you end up seeing that there's a lot of confluence with what's happening with Bitcoin and what's happening with the altcoins. Now, obviously, if Bitcoin's crashing and the alts are crashing, then you're going to likely see a lot of money moving into stable coins. So keeping a look at these things is pretty important. But right now, we are looking like we are in the start of another bull cycle. We just have to see how does that play out, right? The key is, are we going to continue getting support on this 20 exponential moving average? We shot above the 20 exponential moving average pretty high. So when that happens, you want to see these meet again. You want to see us come back down to the 20 and then bounce off of it just like we did here. The next bounce off of this 20 exponential moving average could take us right back up to 200. So I want you to keep a close eye on it, and you know, just remember that going sideways and allowing that 20 exponential to catch up, very, very good for the long term. All right, we're at 22 minutes. That is everything for today. I was going to try to make this 10 minutes. It never happens. I don't know how people can do TA in 10 minutes. I don't get it. 20-minute video, good enough. All right, hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and leave me a comment on the video. All right? Don't forget to do that. Share it on your Twitter, share it with your friends, let people see it. Let's try to get more people into this channel, because I have the interview with Sever coming up at some point in the near future. I'm also going to be reaching out to Wesley Kress at some point in probably the next 3 weeks to a month after my interview with Sever is complete. And then I'll see what Wesley and I can come up with. Maybe we can do something cool on the channel. All right, so thank you guys. I appreciate you joining me. I'll catch you next time. Peace.